Yo, what's up guys, welcome back. So, 60 cards that you might want to get not as soon as possible. It of course heavily depends on the format and future sets. Some of them will come back to those in a couple of moments, but I here have a list of, well, 61 cards. It will be known why 61. So in short, 60 cards that might be staple or semi-staple now or in the near future, or cards that you might want to get because they're just good overall. Most of them, as you see, are super rare or ultra rare, so it depends on you, it depends on which deck you want to play, that you might want to play in the future, that you're playing now. So again, there are a lot of different factors that you have to keep in mind. Do you spend money in the game? So again, it's up to you to decide which cards you want to have from this particular list, but again, just to keep in mind, this might be a helpful tool if you want to decide with at least which secret packs you want to buy, because it might be possible that some of these cards are like buyable, that you can get from one same pack, and that might make your choice much easier to see which packs again you want to buy. So without further ado, let's dig into the 60 card list, because it's a lot, right? The first one is Time Frame Driver. This is card 61, reason being because of this gamma. Again, the first cards are all hand traps, and I feel that rule number one, because as I've mentioned in a couple of videos ago, because the ultra rare craft points are so valuable, I feel that, again, of course it depends on which deck you're playing, but the most valuable cards you might want to get as soon as possible to increase your win chances here on Master Duel are the hand traps. And there are some hand traps that definitely take the cake. Something like Gamma is a superb hand trap. Sadly, it's semi-limited on Master Duel, but it's definitely one of the best hand traps also for us TCG players. DD Crow, again, it's such a good hand trap. Very similar to Effect Veiler, again, negates effects. We all know, right, what these hand traps do. As I've mentioned before, Drawn on Lockbird, very powerful, very strong against basically any deck that searches something like Sky Strikers, for example, from the top of my head. Again, that's, a super competitive deck now on Master Duel. Mexi, I don't need to explain this one. Probably the best hand trap currently on Master Duel, legal at 3. Same for Ash Blossom. Both are pretty much at the same height. You probably want to get these as soon as possible. Again, I'm sitting on a lot of gems, so they're going to be spent within the next couple of days, because Season 1 is going to end as well. Skullmeister, again, one of those hand traps that, depending on which deck you're playing, if you have the room to play hand traps and you're fearing your opponent plays like cards that interact with the graveyard, then Skullmeister is there to negate those effects. The next on the list is an interesting one, and in the near future, we don't know when, where, one of the new archetypes that's currently the best in a TCG, so 2022, it's Sword Soul, and Sword Soul is an archetype heavily based on Synchro Summoning, level 8, for example, level 10, and they're around, at least based on tokens, getting, those level 4 tokens, if I'm not mistaken, on your side of the field. So something like Token Collector is an interesting one, because that hard counters that particular deck. Problem though is that it's single matches, so Token Collector is not the best hand trap. It's a very specific hand trap. Kind of feels like Drawn on Lockbird. It's very good against some matchups, but against other matchups it's useless. So keep that in mind. Same with Artifact Lancia. Lancia, you can discard during your opponent's turn and prevents both players from banishing cards. So decks that, something like Thunder, for example, Chaos decks, decks that rely on banishing cards, Lancia could be like an instant win card. Same for Shifter. Shifter is being played like when you're going second, discard all cards from your opponent during that turn are banished. So again, something like Eldritch or any deck that's heavily based on graveyard effects, then well, it depends, right? Because Shifter also states that you can't have cards in your graveyard. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not the hand trap you want to get first. The other hand traps are much more important, like, for example, Nibiru is also one of them. This is a cool one, the Kaijus. There are more Kaijus. I went with the Wind one, because the potential Wind Barrier statue played a couple of times against today because of the Simorgh link, and again the Wind Barrier statue lets you only special summon wind types, right? So this Kaiju, I forgot its name, Gardarla, I believe the name is, yeah indeed. wind type, so you can tribute away one of your opponent's boss monsters or pesky monsters that could potentially negate something for a vanilla kaiju, because, well, these kaijus don't really do that much. Much more important is that you can get rid of your opponent's big boss monsters. Harpy's Feather Duster speaks for itself. It's ultra rare. Here in the TCG it's not super staple, mostly a side deck, semi-staple I guess, but here in Master Duel the single duel's very similar to a card like Lightning Storm, even though Lightning Storm is, well, I was about to say much more flexible, but it does have the restriction that you can't control face-up cards, right? You know what I mean. So yeah, depends. But Harpy's Feather Duster and Lightning Storm definitely cards you might want to pick up early, especially in a single format, right? Single ranked duels. The pot cards, these are definitely crucial. Again, if you want to increase your win rates, again, it heavily depends on which deck you're playing. If you're playing something like Stun or a deck that does not special summon too much, or not at all, then Pot of Duality is there to, you know, dig you deeper, increase the chances of getting the cards you want. Same for Pot of Extravagance, but Pot of Extravagance hits your own extra deck, so again, not for every deck, but lets you draw 2 cards. Very similar to Pot of Desires, which quite conveniently a couple of days ago got limited to 1 for us TCG players. So Konami thinks Pot of Desires is better than Extravagance? Who knows? But Desires is definitely the most valuable pots here in, well, again, it depends on which deck, but we see more Desires compared to Extravagance. Some very solid go second cards. Dark Ruler no more. Very similar to Lightning Storm in some way. Your opponent can't negate Dark Ruler with any monster effect. So if you activate Dark Ruler no more, all of your opponent's monsters on their side of the field, their effects will be negated. So fantastic go second card, and it actually lets you play the game, right, if you go second. So it's definitely one of those cards that you might want to pick up. Again, depending on which deck you're playing, but let's say Dinosaurs, this is super staple for the deck. Triple Tactics Talent. It's an interesting card. It's very similar to Call by the Grave, which is also here on their list. All have pretty much the same role. Same for Crossout Designator. Again, it hits your opponent's hand traps. Very popular in combo decks like Emancipator, or basically any deck that states that you want to vomit your entire hand to the board. Special summon a couple of multiple big boss monsters, multiple negations, prevent your opponent from playing the game, and that's where stuff like Call by the Grave, Crossout Designator, and of course, yeah, Tactical Talents comes into play. It depends on which cards you want to go for. I would definitely go for Call by the Grave first, and then depending on, you know, which deck you're playing, either Crossout and or Talents might be useful, because Talents also hits your opponent's hand, right? Get a peek at their hand and potentially, you know, send back or take 1 card out of their hand. It's quite useful information. Prosperity is also one of the pot cards. Again, depends. It excavates, I guess, pick 1 card. So again, it depends on which deck you're playing, but Extravagance, Desires, Prosperity are those pot cards you might definitely want to consider in your deck, depending on, you know, what strategy you're using. Book of Moon is an interesting card, super offensive plus defensive. It puts your opponent's monster face down, prevents your opponent from using that particular monster for, let's say, an Exceed summon, a Synchro summon, a Link summon, for example. So that's a super versatile card, Book of Moon. Plus it's super cheap. It's one of those cards that super budget here in Master Duel. And speaking of budget, Forbidden Chalice kind of serves the same role as this card, Forbidden Droplet. While Droplet could potentially hit more monsters from the opponent, Chalice only hits 1, but doesn't need to you know, sending cards from your side of the field or hand to the graveyard. So it's kind of free. Well, depends how you look at it, but both these cards, again, might feel pretty much staple in nowadays, because they let you play the game. Back row hitters, stuff like Galaxy Cyclone and Twin Twister, again, super popular cards in both main and, you know, in the TCG, OCG, side decks as well. For now, because of Eldritch, you definitely want to go for Cyclone, again, depending on which deck you're playing, because it banishes your opponent's spell and or trap. Then again, Twin Twister might have the advantages is that it destroys 2 cards. Again, depends, right? Then, some traps, interesting traps. Torrential Tribute, super budget because it's only a rare. It kind of vanished from our real format years, but eventually, you know, Konami put Torrential Tribute at 3, and it's pretty much back in some decks like Burning Abyss, Phantom Knights, Cosmo as well. It's a board wipe. I don't need to explain this one, right? Super budget as well, but Torrential Tribute is a trap card that most players don't expect, and they'll, you know, happily run into it and then lose their entire board. So, interesting one. Paleozoic Deinonychus. It's basically a Raigeki break, discard one card and then banish a card from your opponent. That's definitely solid, especially for decks that could afford the discard, like Eldritch, Thunder Dragon. Plus, it's you know, very versatile because you can pick whichever card your opponent controls, right? So that's definitely good. Ooh, this is an interesting one, and a card that it's somewhat heavily format dependent, and that's Dimensional Barrier. This is definitely going to be useful in the future with, you know, stuff like Sword Soul hitting the board or hitting Master Duel, heavily focused on synchro summoning. Dimensional Barrier, upon activation, lets you declare, let's say, a monster type. So, for example, Exceed or Synchro or Fusion against Invoked Shaddolls, and then your opponent for that particular turn cannot summon any of the declared card monster types. So, let's say if against Shaddoll Fusion or against Shaddolls, you activate Dimensional Barrier and declare Fusion, your opponent can't Fusion summon for the entire turn. So that's pretty good. It's super side-deck staple nowadays against stuff like, again, Sword Souls, for example, which heavily focus on synchro summoning. The next is one of my favorite cards, slash traps, and that's Last Wind. Last Wind is super budget. Again, it's very similar to a card that's on this list as well, and that's Infinite Impermanence, which again, one of the most powerful traps currently in the game, because again, it has the capability to interact with your opponent during their turn. But Last Wind does have the advantage that, of course, it negates an opponent's monster effect. That's important, it halves the attack. Plus, and that's a cool one, is that it also has a graveyard effect, that when your opponent special summons a monster from the extra deck, you can reset it to your side of the field. So, delicious. Plus, it's budget, so if you can't afford Impermanence, definitely take a look at Last Wind. Or Wind, right. Evenly Matched. Superb against Eldritch, go second, activates Evenly Matched at the end of the battle phase, and then your opponent is forced to basically banish all of their cards face down on their side of the field, right? Next to Lightning Storm, Dark Ruler no more, Nibiru. I feel that Evenly Matched is definitely one of those cards that if your deck is going second, or if you want to go second, I feel this is an easy 2-off, even maybe a 3-off. Again, depends on which deck you're playing. Ice Dragon's Prison is an interesting card, trap card that's heavily based, or it's versatile, but hits your opponent's graveyard as well, plus their board. It lets you reborn a monster from your opponent, and then you can banish one monster on your side of the field, and one monster on your opponent's side of the field with the same type. So basically against any, let's say Shaddolls, for example, your opponent is like a spellcaster on the field, you use Ice Dragon's Prison, reborn a Shaddoll, and then you can banish that Shaddoll you just reborn from your opponent and the spellcaster from your opponent. So again, superb trap, fantastic trap, super versatile destruction and disruption. The Solemn package, I don't need to explain this, right? It's, well, Solemn Judgment, Solemn Warning, Solemn Strike, all have their, at least all have their advantages. While Strike, I feel, is the most versatile. Then again, if you're playing a deck that heavily relies on back row and protecting your back row, your floodgates like Eldritch, Skill Drain, and so on, you should go for Solemn Judgment. But again, Solemn Strike is a superb trap as well. Negates monster effects plus destroys a monster. Red Reboot is a superb side deck card. Then again, if you're playing a if you're playing a go second deck that has the capability to OTK through your opponent's board, then Red Reboot is a card that you definitely want to take a look at. It also has, like Impermanence, the capability to be activated from your hand, plus blocks your opponent's entire trap lineup for that particular turn. So, you know, Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute, etc. are all blocked, and that's very crucial. Imperial Order. It just got banned in the TCG, so it might get banned in Master Duel as well, but for most decks, Imperial Order for now here on Master Duel is pretty much staple. No spells, so superb floodgates, probably one of the best. And speaking of floodgates, there's two here. Skill Drain, again, not for every deck, but something like True Draco, Eldritch, or some stun decks, you can definitely go for Skill Drain. Vanity's Emptiness, it's currently banned in the TCG for a good reason, because it's a super broken card. But again, depends which deck, but Vanity's Emptiness, it's definitely there. Take a look at it and, you know, something like True Draco could definitely main this one. And then last is also a budget very similar to Last Wind, the card that I just showed. Negates monster effects plus in the near future because of the adventure token archetype, again a new archetype for the Phantom Knights and so on. Getting like a budget effect negation for your opponent is Fogblade. Phantom Knights Fogblade, only a rare, so definitely something I would recommend if you're, you know, you can't afford, don't have the ultra rare craft points for impermanence, right? Quickly, the extra deck. Some standard generic synchros. Herald is a cool one, only level 4 plus an Omni negation. Negates everything from your opponent by tributing itself. So fantastic, has low attack stat, defense stat, but that's not too crucial. You could put it up early and then combo off, so prevent your opponent from using a hand trap on you. That's crucial. Some generic and good level 8 synchros, which again could be important if your deck is based around that. I have two of them. That's Omega, again, like hit your opponent's hand once per turn. That could be crucial. Plus, and that's, I feel, one of the best, if not the best synchros currently in the game. And that's Borreload Savage Dragon, an Omni negation. You can, it's an easy level 8 synchro monster, attach a link from your graveyard to it, and then, you know, it gain attack, and depending on which link rating, it will get that multiple, those counters plus multiple potential negations. So, Borreload Savage, if you have the opportunity for playing, or to play a level 8 synchro, then Savage is definitely something that you have to, you know, take a look at. Some generic rank 4 Exceed monsters, two of them, let's go for it. First of all, Utopia, plus Utopia the Lightning as well. You can just, you know, two level 4s, put up Utopia and then immediately overlay for Lightning, because Lightning, as you know, has like 5k attack when it attacks detach 2, so it's basically something to attack over, again, a big boss monster if your opponent has that face up on his side of the field. Anyway, so next, some generic rank 4 exceeds, stuff like Abyss Dweller, for example, the one you see here, very suitable against a lot of matchups, Mermails, Phantom Knights, Burning Abyss, basically any deck that abuses their graveyard, activates cards in their graveyard, basically stuns your opponent from using their graveyard effects for the entire turn. Tornado Dragon, on the other hand, is quite of a generic rank 4 exceed that basically is a mystical space typhoon, so pops a spell or trap from your opponent, can be, you know, superb in any level 4 based deck, right, if you have that in particular. Zeus, again, I don't think needs an explanation, a board wipe, and, you know, basically any exceed deck can run it, simply because it's so easy to summon. Last, a couple of link monsters. Some of them are, well, again, depending on which deck you're playing, but these are definitely some names that you have to keep in mind. And first of all, is one of the few good Link ones, and there are more, but Link Karibo is definitely up there, generic, easy to summon. Next one is Helki Fibrex, and let's face it, stuff like Helki is of course at 1 on Master Duel, but All-Lion is still legal, Jet Synchron is legal, Aurora Dawn is still there, you know, for the Helki Fibrex package, as we TCG players like to call it. And that's quite broken, or was, or is, no, it actually is, because a couple of those cards are banned in the TCG. So keep that in mind. Helki Fibrex, Link 2. Some generic other Link 2 monsters as well, which are super splashable in a lot of decks because they are so easy to be made, like Nightmare Cerberus hits one of your opponent's monsters, destroys one of them, while Nightmare Phoenix hits the back row, hits a spell or trap. And then other, or the Link 3, is Nightmare Unicorn. That one bounces back a card from your opponent. And together with the next one, it's IP Masquerena. IP is a Link 2 which is quite easy to make, but it gives you as a player the opportunity to Link summon during your opponent's turn. So let's say during your opponent's turn you want to Unicorn their board, or Unicorn 1 interruption, or 1 card. You can do that thanks to IP Masquerena, so that's nice. Definitely keep that in mind. Anaconda, maybe not for now, depends if you're playing a fusion-oriented deck, Invoked, Shadows, Thunder, and so on. In the future, there is Destiny, Hero, Phoenix, Enforcer with Destiny Fusion or Fusion Destiny, and there's more which I'm overlooking, but it might be banned in the future. But for now, it's legal Anaconda, and it's still one of those links that again might, you know, be banned in the future. The last ones are okay. Well, okay, no, they're good, depending on which one you want to have. A couple of them here. Boral Sword Dragon hits those OTKs with those double attack, or at least with the double attack potential. Why I feel Access Code Talker is much better, because Access Code might pop cards, at least can pop cards as well, but depends on your deck a little bit, but both of them are very solid. But I would go for Access Code Talker over Boral Sword Dragon anytime. And then last but not least, Appaloosa. Appaloosa, an easy to go link 4. You can establish it quite easy and then, you know, vomit your entire hand, establish your combo, because if your opponent has Nibiru, Ash Blossom, or any hand trap, then Appaloosa is there for that potential negation. Okay. It's a long list, and that's it. Hopefully this one was useful, but yeah, okay. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave a comment or like if you enjoyed the video. Weekend signing out. Peace.